Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Bros podcast. My name is Jeremy. Welcome if it's your first time joining us on the show. I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host Ilan, but most importantly, we're joined by our lovely guest today, Lily Ford. Lily, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Now, Lily, you work a lot in the health, well-being space, holistic space as well for health and wellness. What does a day in your life look like in this space?
Typically, at the moment, a day in my life is a lot of planning for my classes because I've just done my yoga teacher training in February. I'm teaching in a couple of different studios. So it's planning playlists and like structure, things that you probably wouldn't expect when participating in a class.
Including Spotify playlists?
Yep, definitely. Within that also just, little odd jobs, seeing friends. It's a very slow season that I'm in right now, but about to pick up because I've got my student placement starting for my social work degree.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
So a couple of weeks until I start that journey and then hope to graduate by the end of the year. So very, very exciting new chapter awaits.
That's awesome. You love your health and wellness?
Yes.
Have you always loved your health and wellness?
No, not always. It's only something that I've really stepped into the last few years, specifically on the back of just a big lifestyle transformation in general. I was never sporty as a child. In fact, I would always opt for the sports that were, I don't know, you could in a way sit them out, I suppose, but like
playing chess.
Yeah, it was kind of that. Like I would choose badminton, but then I wouldn't actually get up and do it. And my mum was a PT, so she was very big in the sports world. She always sort of politely encouraged me to step in and give it a crack, but I didn't like it. It didn't stick. I was musical, so I was always singing and playing guitar. But in terms of health, I didn't think twice, to be honest, until it kind of called me in towards it in probably 2023 or end of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before
we touch into what called you into health, you spoke about music there and being quite musical. Health and wellness, we see a lot of that online now, the Pilates, the yoga, the run clubs, all of that. Maybe something we don't see too much of is how people incorporate a lot of that musical side of things into health and wellness. Is that something you try to do or something that you are doing?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Music's always been a really big thing for me. My dad's really musical, and so we play and sing together. He's got his own little music studio, and I used to be a music teacher, so
wow.
It was huge for me. When I first stepped into this space, I loved. Well, one of the things I loved about, say, for example, breath work is the cues that you would have with the music. So you'd start, say, box breathing, which is your 4x4, and most songs typically tend to carry like your 4x4 beats. So you're moving your body or your breath in a way that sort of is in tune with the music. And so I do incorporate that as well within any of my yoga or Pilates classes. Like I'll make really sort of specific playlists with different themes, and it has the right cueing, the right time. It actually takes a lot of time. That's one of the things that I didn't really recognize or realize before I moved into this space, is that those moments of cueing, they steal your time away from you. But I actually really enjoy that. I can just, find some good songs on Spotify, light a candle and make it like a bit of a thing. And it ties into then me feeling more confident when I'm delivering my classes. It also indicates to me like, okay, this song's playing, this means we're in the middle of the class. Like it's also good for timing cues too. So music, is a huge, huge part of that.
You mentioned before that health and wellness journey, it kind of swept you in, and you've spoken a little bit about that before, how you got involved, and you've also spoken about how kind of through your story with vaping and then getting into holistic health advocacy and getting off vapes. And I kind of want to talk to you about that, because the transition from going from kind of vaping a lot to then exercising and then running Pilates classes and going full wellness mode, it's a bit of a 180, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you get there?
It is such a long story, and it will take a bit of a zigzaggy journey when I'm trying to explain it. But it first started off with developing like a healthy relationship with movement, because I suppose in the past, like with fad diet culture and all that sort of stuff, I was really skeptic. Well, yeah, I was a skeptic when it came to the space. And my mum was a PT. I didn't really have a lot of my social circle in that space anyway. Like we weren't sporty as a whole, so there was never really that drive to give it a crack in the first place. But when I first moved away from the vaping, my algorithm actually on Instagram and TikTok was showing me a lot of content around running, and I think that probably had a little bit to do with why I gave running a crack, like being one of the first forms of exercise. Like, it's not like I tried a whole plethora of other things and then I was like, oh, maybe the running will stick. Like, running was quite literally the first thing I picked up, and I was like, yeah, let's go with it.
Let's run with it.
Yeah, let's run with it. And it started off really, I don't know, it was like a K around the block, not even probably. And I really, really struggled. And yeah, because I was vaping so much, I was always like coughing up like a concoction of just like crap. Sometimes I was noticing that there was blood in what I was coughing up, and I think it was the strain on my lungs. I've had people online sort of be really, confused about that or say like, am I over exaggerating? But no, it was quite literally like I was coughing up. Like, it wasn't straight blood or anything, but it was blood mixed in with a concoction of other stuff. And sometimes, yes, it did taste like banana vape. And it's just like, that was just something that I experienced as I was moving my body, and I feel like, exercising myself internally. And so the running was the first thing that I gave a go, and I loved it, and I fell in love with the feeling that I got afterward, those post-run endorphins.
Did you do it with people, or was it just a self-discovery initiative for you?
I sent a selfie to my mum and I was like, Mum, I just went on a run.
Yeah, wow.
That was it. And I was just like, oh, I hope that makes her proud, sort of thing. And so, started with the running, and I really liked it. And it went from 1K to I really wanted to be able to get to 5Ks. And then from 5Ks, I was like, I really want to get up to 10. And then I did 10, and I was like, what now?
Would the Lily of 4 years ago, let's say, could they have imagined that Lily of 2025 would be doing all these wellness activities?
No, probably not. I don't even know necessarily if I look down on the wellness stuff, but I didn't look up to it or anything. Like, I just had this real, I don't know how to describe it, this perception around wellness as like, what's the point sort of thing. Like, what's the point of engaging in all of that? Like, yeah, it's like health and it's good for you, but like beyond that, like, what's the point? It's not really fun. It's not really good. Like, I didn't see any benefits. Otherwise I would have done it earlier. Like, to me, it just seemed this like thing tied to someone's personality almost, rather than an actual, fun, engaging bit. But again, that could have just been like my exposure to it when I was younger. And yeah, I didn't really know what it felt like to have a good relationship with movement either. I think it was pretty average. And also within that, I thought partying was way cooler at the time. So I was like, why would I swap that out?
Did you ever go through a bit of a lonely chapter or a period of time through this where you want to change and you want to get better and you want to improve your journey of health, but there is the distraction of partying, and there's those friends that you party with and they think, what's this? There's this change going on, and did you feel ever a sense of them trying to bring you down, or did you always have like a really good supportive network of people who were like, go for it, this is great?
I would say this is the loneliest journey I've ever been on. Really, really, really lonely. I'm very grateful that I've got a partner that has stepped by my side and grown with me through this, and explored a little bit of sobriety. Like, he still will go out and like have a little bit of a drink and do that stuff for the most part, but he'll also come to a yoga class with me or a Pilates class with me, or we'll go for a run around the block in summer, we'll go for a swim, and we'll make like yummy healthy dinners. Like, he's really great in that sort of that sort of way. But yeah, no, it is a lonely path to walk down, a transformation of any sort, because you have to shed this layer of yourself first, and then you almost have to educate or teach or, you know, set boundaries with the people around you so that you can be respected as that new version of self. Because if you don't, and if you don't know where you're going or what you're doing, that sets the precedent for how people essentially will treat you. And when I first started this journey, well, it came out of a very sort of like lonely time. There was like a few big sort of transitional things that had happened, and I'd moved up to a college dormitory and then into a shared house, and it was lonely in the sense that I think I was so lost in myself. I found it difficult to maintain other relationships around me, because I was like, you know, how can you do that? How can you have people in your life if you don't really know yourself, or like have any sort of like core fundamental values? Or like I had no idea. I was just kind of like, hands were in the air. I knew that I was miserable. I knew something wasn't working, and I was, you know, self-perpetuating all of that stuff just with my behaviors and habits. And so that in itself was, you know, very lonely. But from there, when I first started, like, say for example, sobriety, the friends that I did have at the time were, you know, friends that you would meet down at the pub, or you'd go and party, or you'd have a big night with, not really who you'd have over for a cup of tea and a chat and go to a Pilates class with, which is like now my girlfriends, like that's what we'll do. But back then it was just kind of like, well, if you're not going to come out to the club, and you're not going to come out to the bar, and you're not going to come over and get a 6-pack of drinks or get a bag or whatever, then what's the point? And that was tricky. And a lot of people come forward as well, or like they'll send me a message and be like, hey, like, how did you go with the whole like transition through, you know, partying to not partying, like losing friends? And I was like, I think part of that is really understanding your values and what you see in your friendships, because friendships that are built on the fundamental value of, you know, acceptance and growth and safe boundaries will survive. They will survive. But ones that aren't, unfortunately, they fall to the side. And it is sad, but at the same time, it's a compromise that you kind of have to make when you step through that door. You want to explore a new lifestyle away from the societal pressure to, say, drink or, you know, go out every Friday or Saturday.
And do you feel like in that process you may have cut out some people? Do you feel like you've also gained new friends, new contacts, new connections that you probably wouldn't have gained if you didn't go on this transformation journey?
Absolutely, because I wouldn't have been friends with the person that I was back then. And I think that is an important thing. And the reason why I wouldn't be friends with that person is because, and this is something that I'm still learning now, is to be so kind to the past version of myself, because I haven't been. And you may even notice that some of my social media, someone even called me out on it. They were like, why do you constantly shame her? Why are you always like using photos of her, that girl? Because she was just trying her best, and she was, you know, very, very miserable. And you're just out here like airing her dirty laundry kind of. And I saw that and I was like, oh no, like maybe I do that. Maybe I do have this sort of like shame of like who that girl was, and this feeling of, you know, I probably wouldn't be friends with her. But at the same time, like, I need to hold so much respect, because if I hadn't have been her, then I couldn't have been me right now. Like, you know, I had to experience that. I had to see it in order to learn what I like and what I don't like. Same goes for life. You got to do the things that you don't like to figure out what you do like.
A lot of the time when we have this kind of harshness towards ourselves, it comes from a place of having high expectations as well. And do you feel like you were the sort of person, irrespective of whether it was then or even now, do you feel like you've got high and maybe unrelenting standards of yourself?
Possibly. I actually brought this up in a therapy appointment that I had last year. Random. I remember it being a telehealth, and she was like, do you think that you have really high expectations of yourself? And I think it's funny, because I never used to, but now with this mindset of growth and and understanding and healing as well. Like I always do set goals or visualizations for myself, but it's really about learning to enjoy your present moment and make peace with the past first before you can step forward into that. If that makes sense. Like before, it was very much like, yes, goals, let's work in this direction, let's only step forward and not look back, sort of thing. But I found that was almost detrimental because it was building that shame of who I was, that shame of that lifestyle that I had. And I remember I'd wake up in sweats, and I would have woken up from the third dream in a row of me being like in a room with people, and they're racking up lines, and they're like, do you want another? And I go, another? Have I been, what? Like, am I drunk? Yes, you're drunk. And that would be the dream, that I'd be totally inebriated, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, no. Like I had so much fear of going back to the person that I was. I had so much fear of waking up one day and looking in the mirror and it's her again, that I was like, okay, in order to combat that, we must turn her into a villain and villainize this, or vilify this version of self from the past. And it was a bad habit, and I had to break it. And there was a lot of unlearning that had to happen, especially when I went through this sort of like spiritual rebirth back in Feb.
Wow.
Like I just had to make peace with that, those decisions that I made back then got me through a really, really fucked up time in my life. And that was my escapism, and it had to happen to teach me the things that I know now. Like it is something that I'm so, if anything, grateful that I got to experience, because it has widened my lens and it has allowed me to connect with people on such a deep level and understand perspective on such a deep level, and never ever really apply a judgment on someone, because you never really know what someone's going through. And that is just what my outlet was based on what I was going through. In the same way that I wouldn't judge anyone's actions now, even sometimes actions that are not very nice towards me. Say, for example, receiving hate online. Like, I don't judge those actions, because I don't know what that is a reflection of what they have endured. So yeah, it was very much like this eye-opening experience of growth, but also growth from the perspective that there is no right perspective.
Well, it also seems like an eye-opening perspective into self-acceptance. It sounds like you had this immense fear of your past self, immense fear almost of it coming back into the picture, and shame, like you mentioned, that some of your followers picked up on. So did it teach you just a massive lesson about self-acceptance and saying, yeah, that's what I was now, that's what I was then, doesn't mean that's who I am now. And also a bit of a appreciation for almost the butterfly effect.
Yeah, absolutely. But also I feel like within yoga as well, you learn about radical acceptance. Also within my degree, it was so funny, just all the timing for I think it was the subjects I was doing at that moment as well, were all about radical self-acceptance and
dialectical behavioral therapy.
How empowering it is for people, and to like be able to move through it, even with that trauma-informed lens. So yeah, that was really cool, learning about how to accept myself from a way that wasn't shame-based. And then within that, with the yoga stuff, there's actually this term, I think it's called ahimsa, and it translates to non-violence. And it's about showing, like, it's non-violence, yes, to people around you, but it's also a non-violence to yourself. And this, maybe radical self-acceptance of just like understanding that you had to experience those things to be the person that you are now, and it's all okay. And it's, I don't know, it's brought me so much peace, like, because when I was younger, I would always feel like what I was doing was wrong. And I don't know if that's the right wording, but like always feeling like what I was doing was not quite right. Like I felt like my human experience felt different from the average human experience, and not in a good way. I was just like, oh no, are these thoughts mine? Like, are these organic thoughts like right thoughts, or are they wrong thoughts? And a lot of that fed into anxiety, and I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety when I was younger. But yeah, it was this fear of like, maybe I don't trust myself and don't trust my body. And if I compare that to how I am now, I have full trust in my thought and full trust in my body. When things come through and I have a feeling or a thought, I validate, well, for the most part, whether or, not it's come from a good source. And I do a little bit of questioning, but not from a critical lens like I used to when I was younger. It comes from this place of curiosity, but lots of empathy, so much empathy over anything else. And so I've created this really safe space for me in my body, in my brain now, that if my environment now around me is stressing me out or scaring me, I literally just come inwards and I'm like, oh, it's safe here. And that has taken a lot of time. That's why I got these little tattoos. Oh, it's so embarrassing to be like, yeah, I got a tattoo. But it's just like, this whole thing of like coming inwards, because, I had to create this safety for myself. And so internally there is this big safety blanket, and it's full of self-care and empathy and understanding and perspective. So yeah,
it's beautiful.
That's the scope that I'm working with now.
I love that. It's like you've got these little cues to redirect you back to your body, to your breath work and so forth. I think that's a really cool thing. But what it shows, it's a very effective coping mechanism, right? Because we're all going to go through stressful experiences, and there's going to be times where we might be pulled towards some adaptive versus maladaptive coping strategies. And obviously it's at a point in your life, it was vaping, but then you spoke about this concept before on a previous podcast that you did, which is called dopamine switching. And I thought that was a very, very interesting concept, because the idea that we can replace an unhelpful habit with a more helpful habit, and then try and almost unlearn all of the times that we practice that unhelpful habit. And that was running for you, I imagine, especially kind of in that kind of post-recovery journey. But how big has dopamine switching been for you in not just that area of your life, but other areas potentially?
A really interesting point, because when I first started saying the dopamine swapping, I don't know, I don't think I knew as much about it as maybe I do now. And I'm going to try and articulate this as well as I can, because I'm not sure how it will come across. But yes, when I first swapped it, I noticed that the endorphins that I'd get from the running would make me feel significantly better than when I would pick up the vape and hit the vape. And I remember with my friends, when we'd talk about vaping, we'd be like, yeah, but vaping just like, it soothes your anxiety. It just makes you feel so much better. Like if I'm stressed, I'm like, I hit the vape and I'm fine. Like that's the languaging we'd use around it. When I go for a run, those intense feelings of anxiety, which I would argue I always have had some sort of relationship with. I'm very openly a sensitive person. When I would have those feelings, because of the running, they would come and then they would go. And not in a way where I would need to like go for a run every few hours to get rid of them. Like the run would have this longer lasting effect on what felt like my brain-body relationship, and I would just self-soothe in a way. Well, I didn't realize it was self-soothing, but that's essentially what it was doing. So it was a very organic swap. But I also noticed that when the vaping use decreased, and again, this is just the communications that I've had with friends over the years that I've reflected on my behavior. I also noticed that I was eating a little bit more sugar. I also noticed that I was spending a lot more time on my phone, because I started making my content videos of me running. So if you look at that, you've got sugar and you've got your technology base. These are also things that we've seen can peak dopamine too. That in conjunction with the running, naturally, the dopamine on this level is going to outweigh the dopamine from the vaping, or at least it did for me. I can't really necessarily back myself up scientifically there. Some people might completely argue the contrary, that the dopamine provides a higher release. But just in terms of what I experienced and my lived experience in my own body, I started noticing the payoff was way better here than it was for the vaping. And so with time, that replacement became really organic, and it was easier to navigate. Not when I was drinking though. When I was drinking, the only thing I'd be thinking about is that vape. And I think that's also probably what influenced me to start exploring sobriety in the first place. And that fear of like, what if I go out for a drink and then I pick up the vape? What am I going to do? And lack of control in that that space of not being in control of your body when you're drinking as well, I think I was quite fearful of too.
Something I think about a lot when it comes to addiction, and not just with nicotine, but it's the idea of the role that environment plays. How much of it is internal versus what's outside of us? And I always think of this one kind of study they did on American soldiers who were in the Vietnam War. I think about, I could be wrong with the numbers, but a high proportion, like 70 to 80% of soldiers were hooked on hard heroin drugs, opioids, I think, and then only about 5% still retained the same level of drug use when they got back. And that's a very addictive substance. So I'm thinking in terms of environmental switches for you, it sounds like you went on the full sobriety journey, but how did you also manage the internal cravings? Like, surely there was like a physiological response where if you were a heavy user, you'd still have those urges to just pick it up.
I got quite good at understanding what a craving felt like, because I'd always hear people use that languaging around it of like, you'll feel these cravings come through and it will be, da 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 da. And I was like, what does that mean for me? What do these cravings feel like for me? Like, I actually want to like almost catch one in action. And so I remember I was like laying on my bed in my share house, and I felt it come through, and it started as this like hunger. In like my stomach, and I was like, oh, but I just had dinner, that's weird. And then it moved into my throat, and I remember I just watched it, and I was like, I'm catching a craving right now in action. And it was just like this like insatiable hunger followed by a big bout of anxiety. And that's what I knew. And that's when I was just like, okay, that 100% has to be a craving, because that was a weird feeling that I haven't had before. And I think it was when I just started the running, but I was still vaping every day. But I think maybe like this was very fresh into it. I was probably vaping, I'd say maximum 6 times a day. I'm allowed to pick up the vape and have a toke, maximum 6. And I remember I'd be like laying in bed just before sleep, vape would be away, I'd be about to go to bed or have had dinner, and then this feeling would come through, and it's like this waft of like anxiety and then hunger, and it's like, oh no, and then it just would go. But I would just watch it and see where it went in the body first before giving it a label.
What's the best go-to, you reckon, in your opinion? Was it going cold turkey or weaning off?
I didn't go cold turkey, and I think maybe in the past in interviews, I think that may have been misconstrued, because I didn't say, right, off you go, like never vaping again. Like it took me a long time to very slowly reduce. And then I think it was eventually one day I went from maybe picking up the vape twice a day or once a day to none at all. And for some people that could be cold turkey for them based on their use. But because my use was vaping all day, every day, like I wouldn't be able to really do much without having it on me, it was weaning off. So I didn't go, right, no, you're done. It was weaning very slowly, taking it, one step at a time. I didn't necessarily have a plan in mind. I just knew that I liked the running, and then even like my mum would call me and she'd be like, oh, you'll probably notice that with the running stuff that you'll be less inclined to pick up the vape. And I'd be like, nah. Just like I've got no intention to quit, but it was just organically happening.
Would it be something that you recommend people to do, or would you rather recommend people try to find something that they can switch their addiction for, like you've spoken about with the running, and then whilst doing that, wean off of the addiction itself, with the hope and maybe knowledge that by replacing the bad behavior for the good behavior, the bad behavior will eventually start to fall away?
I would say my recommendation is to give everything a go until something sticks, because it's going to look so different for some people, and as it would for others. Like I've had people say that they quit vaping because they started baking and they really loved baking, and it was like sweet food. And I suppose you could look at that as like, the sweetness in the sugar could be dopamine related, but that could be one thing. Or even like maybe that phone use. Anything really that works for you, just giving it a crack and see what works.
Do you feel like you gained, because it's such a vice, right? Something that's addictive is oftentimes a vice, and it's very difficult to overcome it. But self-respect, do you feel like you gained a newfound element of admiration for yourself, respect for yourself, for being able to overcome something that was so difficult and something that consumed such a large proportion of your life?
I would say, I mean, yes now, but when I initially stopped and I started doing all these wellbeing thingies, I was almost ashamed because there was this stigma around it of like, if you quit drinking, if you quit vaping, you think that you're better than everyone else. And I think I was so, fear-led, and again, that anxiety coming in of not wanting people to feel inferior or not wanting people to feel intimidated or any of those things. Like I wanted to put other people, I think, before me, as that like people-pleasing tendency of just like, I don't want anyone to feel small based on the experience that I've had. That I didn't feel admiration for that or any sort of self-respect, because I was like, God forbid I feel proud of myself and it makes someone feel less about themselves. So let's just either, not feel anything at all, or I'll use a little bit of self-deprecation.
You got it.
Deprecation. To sort of, level that out. But now I'm at a point now where like I'm happy with my support system, and I do have a lot of self-respect, and again, like making myself feel safe in my body and my mind is super important for me right now. And within that is my languaging as well towards myself. And so yes, I would say now I do feel proud of myself, and I'm not ashamed to feel proud of myself either, which is something that I did initially struggle with.
With being in environments, one thing we always see is the party environment in Melbourne, whichever city you're in, but specifically in Melbourne, you touched on it before about, the urge to vape when there is that urge to drink as well, or when people are drinking. Would your advice, again, we're talking about advice, but would your advice to someone be, if you do have the tendency to get involved in such activities, would your advice be to refrain from it altogether and to get yourself out of those environments, or to rather have a moment where you speak to yourself internally and say, okay, look, be almost a bit present here. I know which environment I'm in now. I can sense that there are things around me that I might have had a tendency to entertain, but almost talking your way out of it. Would you say that is a more longevity-based approach to healing, rather than just going cold turkey on being in party environments?
I think, if you say to yourself, hey, like, let's stop going out, let's stop seeing my friends because I want to stop vaping, your body will, I think, resent you for that. Well, again, based on my own lived experience, but I think if I was to just restrict myself, it usually makes you want to rebel against yourself. And again, you're jarring that relationship with your mind-body connection. Like, you need to have that level of self-respect and empathy for yourself to understand that it is a gradual process. And again, to become the observer. Well, exactly what you said, really. Like, seeing what works, seeing what you can be conscious of in different spaces. If you know there are going to be triggers there, can you find ways to self-soothe or management techniques in those environments? If someone offers you a vape, have you thought about, is it okay if I do pick up the vape? What's the worst that happens if I have one? Will I have more? Will I go buy one? Like, understanding what that is and those little pathways, again, understanding is that first step forward in the right direction. So I think it's like having that compassion and that empathy, let that guide you, and then also write it all down. I think journaling is such a good idea when it comes to this stuff.
Did you do much of that in your journey?
Heaps.
Yep.
I found it the other day and I was like, whew, this is dark.
Wow.
But it's just like when you're experiencing it, if you're not sure or like how to vent about it or to it, speak to your therapist or your counsellor or your licensed professional and write it down and understand and absorb and just feel those feelings, rather than, trying to tell yourself that there's a right and a wrong, because at the end of the day, there's no right and wrong. There's no experience that is, one's better than the other. It's all just an experience. So you may as well sort of have that compassion for yourself.
Something I'm sensing with you is that you've gotten very good at the skill with just sitting with things rather than trying to avoid uncomfortable feelings and thoughts. Would that be an accurate characterization of you now, at least?
Yeah, I think meditation. But yeah, no, definitely. Like being able to sit with yourself is so important. You don't realize how detached people are from their bodies and from their minds until you kind of, I don't know, see it. And I think the space I'm in now is really awesome. Like I have people come up to me after my classes saying, oh my goodness, I was like laying there just bawling my eyes out, because I will offer people very gentle suggestions to come in with languaging and song cues and all of that stuff. Like I make it a very intentional set space for people to have that journey. And so I've had some really cool stories, but yeah, it's essentially giving people the opportunity to come home to themselves. And for some, that journey inwards is an emotional one, because they're like, whoa, I've been detached for a really long time, or you haven't been listening to yourself, or you've been so cruel to yourself, or that voice in your head actually is, you know, someone else's voice that you learned when you were younger. And, you know, it's little things like that. Just being able to identify it gives you so much more power in yourself, in your body.
Before we finish, Lily, a big part of the show is navigating uncertainties, especially in our 20s. We find that all of us in our 20s, we honestly just don't know what the hell we're doing half the time, and we're going through life and taking things as it comes and just doing our best at it. One question we like to ask our guests is how you navigate uncertainties, but also what is your messaging behind navigating uncertainties to those that are listening in their 20s. And it doesn't necessarily talk about, you know, or need to be about going through an addiction, but whatever uncertainty it is that they might be going through, what would be your little snippet of advice that you would like to tell that person?
I think your 20s are meant to be a time of trial and tribulation with all of these things that come forward. I think they're meant to, because they have to question you. They have to gently challenge you to want to identify what those values are, what those key beliefs. And so, yeah, to add to that is maybe in your own time, or this is what I found really helped me this year, to ask yourself, like, what are your key values? What are your core values? And I ask myself them all the time, because they change all the time. At the moment, it's my health and my well-being as my core values, but also I think family is a big one for me. I think happiness used to be one, but my relationship with happiness has changed now to, I see happiness as an outcome or a product rather than a value. If you align all of your chickens in the right row, then you will get to your happiness, rather than I want happiness in itself. Like, do you see the difference?
Yeah.
But yeah, understanding those key values, those core values, and what they mean for you, how they show up in your everyday. I like to journal, as I said, and come back to that. I also really love visualization as a tool to sort of like goal set, but also not compare. It's very easy for us, especially with social media, to constantly just slip into that mindset of comparing, and then that leads to jealousy and, you know, a whole plethora of other feelings. But having visualization as a tool where you close your eyes and you can quite literally visualize the most empowered version of yourself, what they look like, how they speak, how they show up, and then remind yourself that you actually already are them. It's not that next step or behind that door. It's already within you. Even if your environment right now isn't in the same way that you want it to be in 5 years' time, you have everything that you need already in here. It just needs a little bit of time and a little bit of, I don't know, sitting with it and just holding it to really open up. So, yeah.
That's a beautiful message. Before we wrap up, where is the best place that people can find you and the work that you do?
I would say, my Instagram, I guess. My TikTok's kind of like lame right now, I'm not gonna lie. But it's just wellbeing with Lily, Lily, Lily.
Not double.
I won't spell well-being with, but yeah, well-being with Lily. On Instagram, I post like little stories, reels sometimes, just talking about that. Yeah, I've got some really cool projects in the pipeline at the moment. I'm also taking a little bit of time, or just like noticing that like I said, I was showing me this younger version of myself. So not sharing as much online, which is something that I was doing a lot, but just sharing the bits that feel the most authentic and integral to me right now. But yeah, I don't know. There's some cool stuff happening behind the scenes, and I'll share it at a point where, you know, it's ready to take off and it has a little bit of backing behind it. But yeah, at the moment it's just lots of planning, and yeah, taking pride in my classes that I teach as well every now and again. So yeah, just a little bit of that at the moment.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being a part of the show. We've absolutely loved having you and hearing your story, and we are loving watching what you're doing online, and we're glad that we could make this come together. So we're going to keep watching with close eyes, and once again, a big thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.